folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. It's Friday. Wow, can you believe we got to another Friday? 18 months into this. Well, we'll just leave it at that. It's the 30th of July, 2021, and I'm very fortunate to have today, once again, my guest is retired Major General Bantu Holomisa, the Member of Parliament and leader of the United Democratic Party. We're going to get real quickly into some topics to talk to him about. This is rescheduled from a couple of days ago. I had some tech issues and weren't able to pull this off. So first off, my thanks to General Holomisa for coming back on and also for bearing with the tech issues we had. Good to see you again, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I missed you on the other day. I was busy in the Western Cape with taxi violence there.
Well, actually, that's a good topic I think we should start with, if that's all right. Before we do that, I just need a recognition for those who follow my program. Anyone who supports independent journalism by becoming a member, it's a pretty small fee. I do appreciate that. I don't try to push the membership, but Mohammed Nizami has just become a member, and I want to thank him by doing what I always do for members. And the general will appreciate this because when you render a hand salute, it's a sign of respect. And so this is respect I return back to my paying members. And so here you go. Oh, sir, do it again. We'll do it simultaneously. Here we go. Awesome. Look at that. There's you go back, get the screen capture, Mohammed. You just got saluted by a 2-star general and a colonel. How good is that? Hey, so what's that?
Welcome to the club.
Exactly. Hey, so let's get right into that. Of course, there's been some pretty crazy history in the recent number of years related to taxis, transport industry violence. We did see this purported video of one of the taxi bosses assassinated in broad daylight in Nelson Mandela Bay, Port Elizabeth, or I'm not good at pronouncing Havana. I haven't quite got that down yet. But that just happened in the midst of the chaos that was taking place. That purported assassination was pretty brazen in broad daylight. Now, you just said you were in the Western Cape trying to help sort out some of these disputes. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the Western Cape related to the taxi industry?
The dispute started when the taxis were fighting about the certain routes between Paarl and Belleville. That feud escalated to other routes, but it's quiet now. The two sides have decided to stop fighting, and we have submitted the recommendations to the government. So the matter now is being dealt with by the Ministry of Transport at national as well as at provincial level. And the police and the intelligence army are patrolling the areas. So let's just leave it there. That one is under control. Next question.
Okay, well, that's fine. We can leave it there, but I suspect that many of the viewing audience have less than a great deal of confidence in the ANC's Fakile and Bubalala, but we'll just leave it there. So we'll move on to the next one. So I saw that in the press. Let me just preface this by explaining to folks what's going on here. South Africa's national carrier, South African Airways, is bankrupt. It's been bailed out to the tune of at least 90 billion rand or so over the past decade plus. And it has not turned a profit in over a decade. It's not flying. It released 80% of its pilots, initially let them all go. Then it's got a deal bringing back 20%. It is a shadow of what it was, went from 42 aircraft down to just 9 aircraft, and it's not doing anything. And its subsidiary, Mango, the low-cost airline, just went into business rescue, that South African euphemism for bankruptcy. Now, General Holomisa said there was an agreement was reached recently, and the government was all excited about it, saying, hey, we found a private equity partner. We're going to retain 49% of the equity. They're going to privatize it. They give 51%. And the whole thing was that this equity group, including a former deputy minister from an ANC government, promised to provide 3.5 billion rand investment in the company. But that's kind of all it was. For those on the outside, this is our perspective. And that's why I want to ask your view on this and about this lawsuit, if it's true, is it looks like they're just giving away the airline. I mean, I don't really see anything coming here. South African taxpayers invested far more money into it than this group is going to put into it. I mean, if you're going to give it away, give it to South Africans, give them all a share. If I missed something here, is that what's happening? And what's your lawsuit about? And is there a lawsuit? I guess I should ask.
Yes, it's true that the United Democratic Movement, our party, did say we are going to take SAA, the Department of Public Enterprise, to court if that deal was on. Then we had, while we were preparing with our lawyers, the president of the country intervened publicly and said, no, there is no deal in actual fact. So we felt that we would be fooling ourselves as we go to court if the head of state says there is no deal. So what we were querying mainly was there was a company which was part of this consortium, a company which was fingered by the Party Commission on the Public Investment Corporation, that is PIC, which is managing the pensions of South African government employees. So this company, therefore, we were told that is part of this consortium, but we said the government has not yet cleared that company through the internal investigations which were recommended by Chief Judge Mpati's commission. So we are waiting to hear from the president to tell the country at what stage is this transaction is on now. Otherwise, if they are still going to marry with that company, we are going to take them to court.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering where it's going on. So it looks, for the moment, as if this isn't really a thing. You know, it's funny because it was announced as it's a done deal, and the minister said that. It was in the press, and then the government did sort of pull back from it. As you mentioned, the president said it's not really a finished deal. But the deal itself looks pretty suspicious if, in fact, the details that were released are actually accurate, and they were widely reported across all South African media as having been actually the details of the deal. 3.5 billion investment, and the money wasn't there. They were going to go get the equity somewhere. I think that should be very disturbing for South Africans. And look at the face of the deal, sir. If in fact that is the information is correct, let's say that a private equity group gets over half the airline for $3.5 billion. It doesn't seem to me to be a pretty good deal for South African taxpayers and citizens.
Definitely, those were some of the questions we raised, as to say, why is it so? This airline is sold so cheaply. Even the technical equipment is more expensive than 3.5 billion rands as we speak today. But we have since referred the whole issue to Parliament to be attended to by a relevant committee on public accounts. So whilst we are waiting for the president and the minister responsible to announce on this, but we felt that let us not lower our guards, rather refer this to the relevant committee in Parliament, so that the Parliament committee can do an oversight on the whole transaction and summon the SAA and the minister to tell us what were the circumstances which led to them to announcing this deal with a company which was fingered in a corruption investigation in the first instance.
Well, that's a good point.
Because it's led by a former deputy minister of finance, perhaps? So those questions are still hanging there.
Well, far be it for me to accuse the African National Congress of corrupt practices, but that is in fact the $64,000 question, and I appreciate the way you framed that. Yeah, a former deputy minister of finance. It does seem a bit odd on the outside. Also, the way that it seemed to be kind of rushed through after all that's happened with this airline. But, people outside the South African environment might be asking the question, even inside South Africa, this is a political party that has membership in Parliament. It sits in Parliament. Why would your political party go to the courts instead of going to Parliament? You just explained quite eloquently that, in fact, you have gone to Parliament, to the committee, to say what's going on here. But I think, and you can answer this if you like, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but I suspect that the reason you decided to go for a lawsuit because the initial impression was this was a done deal already, and you were probably trying to get light on this before it was completed and it became a fait accompli.
That's precisely what we have done, because we know we have a history with the ruling party in this country. They have the numbers in Parliament. And we have succeeded in the past to go to Parliament, to courts like Constitutional Court, wherein we have succeeded. For instance, on the issue of the state capture, the ANC government didn't want that commission to take off. Then we had to, as small parties, rush to the Concord and forced the ruling party with their big numbers. It was the same when we were applying for the secret balloting, that in the event that we want to introduce a vote of no confidence against President Zuma, the members of parliament should vote secretly. So the courts allowed us. So there are numbers, therefore, especially that we have pointed out that these fellows, they have institutionalized the corruption. Therefore, they must always be looked at with different type of glasses.
Yeah, no rose-colored glasses here. Anything that comes out of the ruling African National Congress, you've got to look at with a skewed eye and wonder what's the motivation, what's behind it. I agree with you 100% there. I think if I was in South Africa, I might be lured to your party just from those statements alone. But it's definitely a situation in which this government definitely needs to have attention. Now, you raised something here. It's very interesting. I think a lot of people outside of South Africa don't even know this. There were, I think, 9 no confidence votes against Jacob Zuma when he was president that were brought on the floor and made it to the floor. I think it was 9, and every one of them failed. But one of the reasons they failed is because initially these things, the effort was to have a show of hands. So can one imagine if you're sitting in Parliament, and by the way, South Africa doesn't have a direct election system for the international audience. You vote for a political party, and they select their members of Parliament, and they put them in Parliament. So it's a party list that they approve. And so the members of the ANC who sit in the Parliament aren't picked by voters. The party's picked by voters, but the members of Parliament, they're picked by Luthuli House. That's the governing body for the ANC. So who are they beholden to? Voters or to their party? Well, they're beholden to their party in this case in the majority. And what happens is that if it's a show of hands, okay, who here votes no confidence for the president's conduct? Okay, well, now we know who voted no, and we're gonna make them pay. They won't be members of Parliament, or their cars will be taken away, their salaries will be deducted. So one can only imagine, and I suspect that's and people forget that the UDM was part of this effort to push to make sure that it was a secret vote, a secret ballot. And when that did happen, we saw that I think it was at least 24 members of the ANC clearly defected. Just based on the numbers, it had to be at least 24. That was a rather important thing, I think, for your democracy, General Holomisa, and I think a lot of people ought to remember that and give your party credit for your efforts there.
Thank you. He survived by 11 votes.
11 votes.
So at least those guys from the ANC who came back in the last election, they owe me and our party big time.
Well, that's a good point. That's a fair point. I can't dispute that. Listen, we should probably shift focus, since it'll probably take up a fair amount of our time this morning that we're together, about a couple of things. Let me talk about this Independent Electoral Commission recommendation. Then I want to come back to the Gauteng and KZN violence and what did and didn't happen there and failures and such. And then if we've got time, I'd like to get to your party and what's going on for the upcoming election, assuming there is one. But I should let people know that former Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke was part of a commission to study whether it's feasible and it's safe to hold elections in South Africa. Now, of course, the government announced that within the framework of the Constitution, that municipal elections, which take place every 5 years, would be scheduled for the 27th of October. There's a lot of work that's done before that. You have to register and all these different things. Anyway, so that's supposed to be the election date. Well, we just saw a report come out in a press conference, a shocking press conference, in which Moseneke said that it is not safe to hold free and fair elections in South Africa. Now, before you get a chance to answer, sir, I'm going to say I agree it's not safe in South Africa to hold free and fair elections. It's not safe for the ANC because they're going to lose their hat. But the bottom line here is that let me frame this. So over 100 countries around the world have held one election or another of some form since the pandemic began. In Africa, at least 30 nations have held elections, some multiple elections, including Ethiopia, which is in the middle of a conflict, a war, in which 25% of the population couldn't vote because of the conflict and other reasons. We saw that the Central African Republic, where South African National Defense Force troops deployed to a failed state just a few years ago, had an election. And in Somaliland, a country only 6 countries around the world recognize, they've had a successful, peaceful election. I have participated in person in 3 elections since the pandemic began, and there's no jab available when I did all 3 of those elections. And I was able to do it safely using proper hygiene and social distancing. It is beyond comprehension that there's an effort to convince the Independent Electoral Commission to delay the municipal elections, which in my view can only mean one thing: the ANC praying that people forget their failures in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng province, as well as all the actions of the National Coronavirus Command Council. And with that, sir, I'll give you a chance to get in there.
Well, you can't blame the ANC because its president is the one who announced the date for October without consulting other leaders. Whilst other political parties were skeptical about holding elections in the middle of the pandemic, we did ask for a meeting with the IEC for them to brief us as to whether it would be feasible to hold elections this year. Indeed, we were given a date on a particular Saturday, but we insisted that they should bring along the scientists as well as the Department of Health so that they can address these fears we are having. Guess what? The meeting was scheduled to be on Saturday. On the eve of that meeting, on a particular Friday, President Ramaphosa announced the date of the election. So we were asking IEC, what was the point of recommending to the president to announce the date, and yet you are still going to answer us? So I think they were in a difficult position, but we still insisted. The very Department of Health was against holding election at that point in time, precisely because the ANC government has failed dismally to roll out the vaccination program. They have been lying, talking, but we are still lagging far behind. I mean, out of 56 million, 58, 56 million population, they have only vaccinated 6 million. And we have been telling them from from last year, that why are you not investing on this? But it turned out even the Minister of Health is also involved in transactions which are laced with corruption. So, but we are happy that the elections have been delayed. And also, we do not have like the luxury of other countries where they have use technological means. So we still have large areas here where there's no infrastructure. And February now we think that at least 50 to 60%, I hope, would have been vaccinated. Then we can vote. We rather take a safe route than gambling.
I appreciate that position. That's in stark contrast to the Freedom Front Plus. I interviewed Dr. Peter Groenewald last week, and his position was actually different, not happy about the delay. I'm hoping to hear from other parties, so it's good to get the UDM's position on that, and I understand your concerns about it. Again, though, my position on this is that I'm astounded that South Africa feels it can't do it. I mean, people standing in line for hours because all the stores have been destroyed in KZN, not social distancing in the midst of the pandemic to get food and water and bread, and the government's not even addressing that. But on the 27th of April, go ahead.
Don't even try to associate this decision with what happened in KZN.
Yeah.
So that one is separate altogether, and it was never a part of this.
No, absolutely. But my point is that I was going to go back to, and you know full well, you were there. You were present on the 27th of April, 1994, the historic day when South Africans voted, and they stood in line for 12, 13 hours for a chance for the first time in their life to get to vote for most people who were voting that day. So it's a little concerning, but I appreciate the position UDM's coming from, and I can understand the abundance of caution. It's certainly not something to take lightly, so I appreciate that. So thank you for sharing that. So that's kind of the position there. Let's talk about KZN and Gauteng a little bit about this. For those shaking his head, I can see the general's not happy about this, but neither am I. I covered this from the outset when the Constitutional Court declared that former President Zuma was guilty of contempt of court and sentenced him to 15 months unsuspended sentence. Gave him 5 days to get his affairs in order to report to a correctional facility. He failed to do it. He asked the court for a rescission, which is, that in itself is quite shocking and unprecedented. And he gave his reasons as he's old. He's 79. He's nearly an octogenarian. Let's be fair. He says he's in poor health. He needs a physical therapist every day. But the problem with that argument is that in the week build up to him supposedly turning himself in, and then the police minister and commissioner issuing a warrant and arresting him before the 8th of July, which they didn't do. He surrendered after the 8th at the escort facility after midnight. But in the build up to that, he was marching with his supporters in KwaZulu-Natal near his home in Nkandla. He held a big rally. He stood up on the stage without a mask on next to Ace Magashule, the suspended Secretary General of the ANC, and Carl Niehaus, his devoted fan, and he's standing up there singing and dancing and cheering, and we're being told that it's unsafe for him to be in prison because he'll be around people who could be exposed, and that he's unhealthy. The whole thing is bizarre, and then it just kind of unravels from there after that. We could talk about a whole host of different things, but let me get your initial thoughts about what exactly did we see unfold here in the last couple weeks? Because the government's making all kinds of claims after they were absent for 10 or 11 days, and now they're claiming all sorts of things. But from your perspective, sir, obviously you've got people on the ground in your party that are in. That's not the strength of your party in KwaZulu-Natal, but I'm sure you have people there, and you're in Parliament, so you have some information that maybe you can share with us if it's public. But what are your thoughts about what unfolded in the last few weeks here in July?
Well, I think firstly, Mr. Zuma said he would be prepared to go and serve his sentence rather than going back to the Zondo Commission. And he has done exactly that. but it would appear that the ANC is beginning to implode. The internal factions which have been there are playing out in the public. It is unfortunate that the government seemed to have underestimated the campaign by those who wanted to use the Zuma name, and they thought maybe they were joking. But if you look at from a military eye point of view, speaking to you also as a former officer, military officer, this operation looks like it was planned, and it was characterized by the certain principle you are familiar with in the army. That is surprise, deception, speed, and control. And the initiative, as we speak, I don't think the government has rescued the initiative. I think it's still with those other people, unless and until they display people who are behind this and charge them, then people will have confidence. So this is nothing else but the beginning of the explosion of the ANC in public. We've been seeing them talking, leaking these stories, but unfortunately it was at the expense of our economy, at the expense of our infrastructure. And it's clear that there was an element of sabotaging, not just only to loot. Yes, looting, we have seen that for many years in this country. But once people begin to burn down the infrastructure, then you ask yourself some question as to at what stage of the revolution are we? Are we in a second revolution? And if it's a second revolution, what phase is it? Why are they using weapons? How do they manage to cut fences and also deal with private security? It might be sponsored from within, or some people in the government might have utilized their skill. We don't know who is this guy who is so highly sophisticated and trained and to implement this operation with that speed and control we have seen it.
It was quite fast, wasn't it? And if you look at it objectively from the outside and you look at what was targeted and what happened, if you ignore the distraction of the looting, which I mean it's horrific and it's going to take a long time for KwaZulu-Natal to recover. But if you ignore that and you look at the fact that radio stations were attacked, ransacked, their ability to transmit was destroyed, a water treatment facility was attacked, a crematorium was destroyed and looted repeatedly. People who are hungry don't go to crematoriums and destroy them. That seems odd. And then, in addition to that, General, now the MTN, the director of MTN came out, the South African mobile carrier, and said during this that he was heartbroken. He said that we have over 1,000 towers that we can't get to. Many are destroyed. And then later, I was on a different program and someone refuted that, saying, well, that was overblown. That's actually not true. Well, it is true. Two things. One, that they couldn't get to some of these towers because they couldn't service them, so because it was dangerous. But the reality is that telecommunications towers, which you have to climb up or climb up a hill or up on a building somewhere to get to, they're not exactly sitting on top of spars or on top of macro or on top of game. They're at a place you have to get to them, and it doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. And they went for the N3, the main artery into Southern Africa, which services from the port of Durban, all of Gauteng and Mpumalanga and all those provinces up there, plus Botswana and Zimbabwe and Malawi and Zambia. The N3 looting at the port. Then one of the things I predicted, unfortunately, in the midst of this, if they didn't get control, is I cautioned that people needed to protect OR Tambo and they needed to protect King Shaka because they would become targets. Turns out that they got things under control, or at least it calmed down in Gauteng before OR Tambo was ransacked. There's lots of luxury shops, in there. That's a great target. And it wouldn't have been just the shops that would have been looted. The whole infrastructure would have been destroyed. If you've ever been to OR Tambo, there's multiple entrances. It's so easy to overwhelm the small security force there and run in. I'm not trying to encourage him by doing this. I'm just pointing out the obvious here. But once they got in and looted that stuff, people would have destroyed the auxiliary power units that power the planes on the ground, the ramps, all the equipment. I cautioned Com Air and Lift, the new airline, who weren't flying at the time because of the lockdown, to move any aircraft out of OR Tambo, say to Uppington or to Gaborone or somewhere like that. The good news is they didn't go after OR Tambo, but there were reports from the police that they actually tried to attack King Shaka and they were repelled. So that's not something that just happens by looters. Clearly something else is going on here. I'm not making a claim, and I don't think you are, about who's behind this or what's behind it. But from the outset, sir, what I said when this started is this is an internal civil war within the African National Congress playing out in front of our eyes, and South Africans are the victims, and the ANC doesn't care. I think you would concur with that. Does that sound accurate to you?
I fully agree with you. You'll remember that I gave you about 4 principles which characterize this operation. That was surprise, deception, speed and control. You deceive them while people they are looking at the looting side. They are shocked by that. But other people are climbing mountains wanting to destroy the communications. So you focus on those. So these people who are doing this are militarily trained. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Absolutely. Well, there's a few questions that came in the chat here. Let me get these and we'll come back to KZN because I don't want to miss these because the chat keeps coming up from the people in watching the program. One of them is this basic income grant. Someone in the chat asked your view on that and your thoughts on it about the basic income grant, which was just announced. About, I suppose their question is probably, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think they can actually fund it? Do you think it's a good idea if it's permanent or if it's temporary? Any thoughts on this basic income grant?
Unfortunately, you are speaking to a wrong person when it comes to that. In our manifesto in 1999, when we went to Parliament for the first time, by seeing the level of poverty in rural areas and in the township, we called for this basic income grant to be introduced. So we support that. But I think what we need to do is not to just dismiss it, but we should be focusing more on looking at the cake we have between now and 1994. we don't seem to have had good ingredients to bake this cake so that we can share it. Instead, we have been consumers, and now that cake has shrunk. So it is therefore going to be a responsibility of everybody to share the little we have. Unfortunately, that grant can no longer be postponed. It has to be introduced in South Africa.
Fair enough, sir. But the grant is 350 Rand. That's $23.33. That seems to be woefully inadequate.
It is. If you talk about the amount, I would prefer that at least to talk over 600 Rand to 1,000 Rand per month. But the principle, you cannot remove that grant at all. It has to be here. And the Minister of Finance must know that it will form his budget in future until we have addressed the issue of unemployment, which is rising every day. Absolutely. And levels of.
Absolutely. And my expectation, my assumption would be that the grant is based on income level or lack of income, and that would be the sole qualifier in your view. Yeah. Well, that's a sound position to go with. Yes, the basic income. Now, there's another one. I don't know if your party has a position on this. This has been very controversial. The ANC's introduced this. And with the activities of civil defense groups and then some vigilantes in KZN and Gauteng recently, this has definitely come back to the table, and was asked in the chat about your view or comments on the Firearms Control Act. Does your party have a position on that, or is that something you weighed in on?
To be honest with you, we don't have a position as yet on the firearms legislation. I wouldn't agree fully that people must be disarmed, not in South Africa. We have not even started to identify the arms caches which were used by the liberation movement, including some right-wing organizations. We need to have a clear map from those leaders before they leave this planet, so that we know where are those arms, and then we start cleaning the country. Because everybody has got a gun here, so it's not a good image. So, but we are looking forward to debate it in our conference for end of the year, especially if the COVID is giving us a break a little bit, because these lockdowns here are a limiting factor, and we are unable to discuss some of the important issues.
Folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. My special feature guest today is none other than Major General retired Bantu Holomisa, who's a member of Parliament in South Africa, a distinguished military veteran from the old days before the new dispensation, and he's been active in politics ever since then, and in trying to improve the situation for South Africans across the board. He is the leader of the United Democratic Party, one of the parties that will be competing in the upcoming municipal elections, which I'm not really sure if they're delayed or not. It seems General Holomisa seemed to think that they're delayed. I'm not sure if that decision's been reached by the IEC, but whether it is or not, the recommendation is it be pushed to February. So that's what we're looking at for the election, potentially in February. So some of the questions that folks have asked here are about the ANC and the delay is, you know, when Ramaphosa came out last year on the 27th of March, announced a 21-day lockdown, a pretty severe lockdown, the worst, I mean, the most constrained on the planet at the time. He said we need these 3 weeks to prepare the hospitals. But in the intervening 18 months, they not only have not prepared any hospitals, they have allowed the Charlotte Macaxa Hospital to be burned, and then spent 5 weeks before they awarded a tender to repair it, during which 30 million Rand worth of copper and wiring was stolen from the hospital, so it's going to cost even more. So the government claimed that they knew that the third wave was coming at the time, and they spent 5 weeks. So I mean, to not to refute your point, General, but just to get your take on this, because I think your point was that you're hoping and counting on the jab as being the thing to help make this safer. But the ANC has told us the hospitals need to be finished, but they have no credibility in this matter. Are we missing something here?
One word: and that word is incompetence.
Okay, all right.
This cuts across whether it's intelligence, it's defense, it's police, it's Department of Health. I think the best way for these guys is just to hand over power to the Chief Justice and say, please form an interim government. We have to go and sort out our things outside government. We will come back in the next election of 2024. Then the country, our civil society can look into that and have an interim government, which is not involving any political parties, but they will have to look into. I'm even worried now, once Zondo Commission publishes these findings and recommendations, who will implement those findings and recommendations? If we were to have an interim setup now, between now and 2024, there's a chance that you would have a stability in the government institutions. At least the people who would be running those departments would be competent and not relying on this thing of deploying cadres who are clueless. So, but let's see. Let's just continue praying.
Well, I like your approach. They should just say, we're not capable. Take over for us, caretaker government. I think the word that is appropriate because South Africans, you always say cadres. On this side of the Atlantic, we say cadre. But I think the word really is these guys are apparatchiks. Just think of the Soviet Union. They're party apparatchiks who have no competency. They're just out there deploying. It's really disappointing. Listen, sir, you're a South African, and your country is an amazing place. I absolutely love South Africa. Amazing people, fascinating cultures, languages. It's just beautiful topography, great potential. It's got to be heartbreaking for you, thinking where things are at now and fading back to 1994. We were both young men. I was a little younger than you back then. We were both young men in 1994, and there was a lot of hope for where we could get. And arguably, I think if someone's objective, we can make the argument that the ANC and the government post-94 got off to a good start, although there were already signs there were problems. But here we are in 2021, and children are dying in pit latrines because no investment for abolition units in the Eastern Cape, and corrupt BE companies get contracts to deliver textbooks, and children go that textbooks because never delivered. And ESCOM is a failure, and SAA is a failure, and the airports company South Africa, and Transnet, and I could go on and on and on. And they'll blame apartheid all day, and certainly there's merit to some of that claim. But the ANC's had 27 years, and in many ways, it seems like we've gone further backwards than forwards. Any thoughts or comments on that commentary?
It's true that we started on very well, especially under President Mandela and President Thabo Mbeki. But we began to see a slide when as early as 1998, when they announced that they were going to spend billions of rands on buying military toys. Yet the parliament said, we need to invest more on social security as opposed to the military one. And we trusted them until we had this announcement of the arms deal. From that point, we have been hearing about these companies which are fronting for the ruling party, investment companies. You have such companies as Bato Trust, Kebe Investments, Chancellor House, Bosasa, which was channeling billions of rands to Tule House for their rallies and elections, even using their offices. Then we did say, we're on a reverse gear now. In actual fact, others were saying we are on a slippery slope. The people in the townships and in the homelands who used to have jobs, factory around those areas, are the ones who say now, what happened? Where are those factories? Why the roads are not maintained? You go to towns like Mabato, Mtata, and so on, Johannesburg, potholes. This is not the South Africa we fought for. So this regression, therefore, needs to be looked into. And I think the voters need a space to breathe. That's why I'm saying, I hope Cyril one day would say, in the interest of South Africa, he must tell his NEC that, guys, the call by General Holomisa that we must have an interim government between now and 2024 is the best solution, so that we can go and deal with our own problems. Because currently, we are unable to differentiate between the party outside and the party running the country. They are conflicted. The lines are too blurred for me.
I think it's a fair comment, and the argument I've made for many, many years, even when I was very generous to the ANC as late as 2018, is that the ANC is Lutuli House and South Africa to the ANC is Lutuli House, not South Africa. That's their loyalty is to Lutuli House, not to the nation. That's frustrating. There's just a super chat just came in from 10 euros from Chris Wyatt Africa. Says, Mr. Holomisa, during your time in Ciskei, I was there from South Africa building new and upgrading old data communication switches. No danger. Time to drag the ANC to election. Window of opportunity is now. I think Chris is arguing that it's time to have the election in October, not in February. But you stated your position. You're concerned about South African safety and health. So I think that's. But it's interesting that he was in the Ciskei working on comms back when you were there.
No, I never worked in Ciskei. I was head of
Transkei. I think he meant to say Transkei. Yeah, he wrote Ciskei, but I think he meant Transkei. Yeah. That's
right. And just tell him that the decision has been made that there will be no elections this year.
Okay, well, there you go. So, but thanks for the super chat. Daniel Prinsley just gave 1,000 Rand super chat. Wow. Says, General Holomisa, what's your opinion on the Gupta's looting of South Africa? Oh, I hadn't even planned on asking that question. But yeah, that's a very good question. What are your thoughts on that?
The Zondo Commission would not be finalized without the input from the Guptas, because their names have been dragged down in that commission. So also the name of the former President Zuma. As long as those two have not testified in that commission, then we must forget about the Zondo Commission coming up with credible findings when it comes to Guptas and Mr. Zuma. So I hope that the extradition processes between these two countries will lead to the Guptas being brought back to South Africa. And I don't know why are they running all over. They should come back and explain that, yes, we did get money. The South Africans want to know the how part. How was it transferred to yourselves? How did you take so many money, billions? Is it true that you left with so many billions? By running all over the show, it just reinforces that they are a guilty party.
Well, listen, I'd like to extend an invitation right now to the Gupta brothers and their family. I mean, South Africa is a beautiful country. It's a lovely place. I suggest you go back to South Africa and take a little time to decompress and share with the government what you know and what you don't know. I'm just saying. So
it's simple.
It's an open invitation from Major General Bantu Holomisa and Colonel Chris Wyatt to come back to South Africa and just share what you know with the government. We'd like to know. Yeah, that's interesting. It's the Guptas. I wasn't planning on asking you about that. Isn't it a question? Now, there's a couple other topics people asked me to address here. I'll just go over them. I have my own views on this, but we want to hear what your views on these things are. Clearly, there was a need to right some historical wrongs, particularly people being dislocated from their land during the apartheid era and going back to the Native Lands Act of 1913 in that time frame. That's clearly a legitimate thing, and there was a land claims process, and many of those were completed in the first stage. But this bill before Parliament for expropriation without compensation is about property, which is not just land. Does your party have a position on this EWC bill, and any thoughts on where it's at or whether it should go forward?
I think we should give a background on this in the first instance.
Mm-hmm.
In the conflict between black and white South Africans, militarily speaking, there was no winner.
Mm-hmm.
The leaders at the time, especially after President Gorbachev and Reagan in 1984 or 85, agreed that there must be a cessation of hostilities between West and East. As a result of that, Namibia was freed in 1990. The next country which followed after that was South Africa. All those decisions were arrived at through peaceful means, that is negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
So the constitution of South Africa, because of the tension and violence, was structured in such a way that we will build this country in phases. The first phase was to grant black South Africans a right to vote, and the power was transferred through using the same constitution. Notwithstanding the political power we had, we still had challenges. Right now, you have about 53 million black South Africans who are queuing, looking for jobs, who are looking to own something, and you have a remainder of the population who own properties and land. So I, therefore, support the need to review the issue of land. The system we had used before, unfortunately, was laced with corruption, because the people who were supposed to pay the people some monies for their land, those monies were, the transaction ended up being escalated and topping up. So the parliament, therefore, had to intervene. Now, the stage we are in now is looking at the how part, because black South Africans must be given a piece of land. They must say, I'm proud, I'm a South African. I've got a title deed here, I can do this and that. And the how part has to come out of the consultations, which took place about 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. They must come out now in a white paper, green paper, white paper, then it will be a legislation later. Mm-hmm. So I am not worried about this. I think South Africans are going to find a solution. Yes, I support the issue of land reforms dearly, and it's long overdue.
Well, it sounds like we probably agree about the issue of land reform. It doesn't sound like you're pushing the expropriation without compensation, but there's a solution somewhere in between. Not to speak for you, but that's what I infer from that.
It doesn't matter whatever term you want. You can come up with juicy language and so on. Mm-hmm. But this is a constitutional state. Just bear in mind on that one, that the people will still have a right to challenge even the black South Africans who own nothing today. Mm-hmm. If Parliament fails, they can go direct to the Constitutional Court and say, we want land. Mm-hmm. But the question will be, how do you do that?
Yep, fair enough. Now, actually, I have a solution that I've been proposing for a number of years, and I've heard that it's occurred on a limited basis in some places, but I'm not sure it's happened on a national level. The RDP houses that the government built, the ANC put together these programs, the land, the plot that they're on, do they still belong to the government? And if so, why doesn't the government just issue clear title to that piece of property in that house to the occupants? if that's the case, you free up billions of rand or billions of dollars of dead capital because people want to have collateral and become landowners, not agricultural landowners, but property owners of their homes. Am I getting something wrong in that discussion?
In some areas, very few areas, they do give the people title deeds, but the rest of the houses, the aim of building those houses were intended to help the poor, especially those who come from rural areas to come and work. But even that system is not sustainable because people tend to get a house, and because they are not working and they lease these houses now to the people who are coming from outside the country, then that also raises tensions.
Sounds like a very old time-worn story of the UK with council houses where people, because of their income level, get a council house and then they double up at a family member's house and rent out the place. They're not supposed to do that.
But there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in giving people title deeds, especially if the services are good. There's water, food, electricity, and so on. And then, but the quality also needs to be checked up. Unfortunately, the ANC built the worst houses than the apartheid government did for the poor people.
Yeah, no, some of those RDP houses are quite poor. I mean, it's unfortunate, but yeah, that's dead capital potentially that could be freed up, given to poor people. They own something, and you don't even have to tax it. You know, you can give it a grace period because people's income is so low they wouldn't have to pay any taxes on the property and land for a period of time. But I think that's good. So let's shift here before we run out of time about the election. Yeah. If it goes to February, which you're saying, what's the plan for the UDM? Your party is a small party in the scheme of things, but not an unimportant party. And I frequently mention your party as one of the parties that I'm encouraging to do well in municipal elections, so you can either win a municipality outright, a small one, or get in a coalition in a larger municipality with other parties. Do you have a solid plan? Has your party worked out what it's going to do for this upcoming municipal election so that you can hopefully gain some seats and get some more influence for your constituents and for South Africans?
Influence, that word influence, is a very interesting word. The UDM has occupied the crease, if I can use the cricket language.
Okay.
Have occupied the crease since 1999, and we have hit them for 4s and 6s, hit boundary it is. But on a serious note, the UDM would have grown big had we had resources. Unfortunately, I am not prepared to take a flight to go somewhere in Europe or West or East to go and look for money, because I don't want to be influenced by those sponsors in future. So the contribution I'm making now, which have been vindicated, especially on corruption issue, we have been betting on that platform from 1999 up to this stage. And I'm happy with the role we're playing. Hopefully in February, there will be people who will be sober to say, not under ANC anymore. Who is the next alternative? So maybe we'll get some hanging fruits there somewhere, low hanging fruits.
Okay, well, and that's the reason why I said your party is small, but not unimportant. It does matter because, as you said, I appreciate that, General Holomisa. I mean, I'm not a cricket guy, but I have been to a Cricket World Cup, and I do get the game, even though it's a bit strange. I'm a rugby guy, but I did get the reference there. Yeah, no. So you guys you've been hitting it out of the park, despite having a small party, because you do have the influence, and that's awesome. Now, I hope that within the party, without getting into details, you don't have to share this, but I hope that the party has younger youth coming up and people who are going to eventually someone else step up to the plate. I'm not asking you to step away from the UDF, but if the party's going to stay viable long term, we all leave the stage at some point, if that's in 10 or 20 or 30 years. I mean, look at Mangosuthu Buthelezi in his 90s. He's still very influential. But my point is that if your party's going to be viable future and keep its role going, hopefully you're developing that young leadership behind you. As a former military guy, I suspect that you are developing junior leadership.
In the next interview you have for UTM, you must talk to the Deputy President of the United Democratic Movement. I can bet you will go home and say, Holomisa must go and retire. This is the man who's taking home.
Well, okay. Well, then wait a second. I'm not in a hurry for you to retire, so I don't know if I want to have that interview. Because
No, wait. I mean, these things are easy now. You just log in, give us your link, and then you talk to them.
All right.
Expose them to the world.
No, let's do that. Let's do that. Send me some of the details, and I will interview the deputy leader of the party. Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure to do that.
Especially if you talk economy, you talk finances, public service and public enterprise. He knows his stuff.
Well, brilliant. We'll do it. We'll bring him on. Absolutely, talk about it. Well, we've talked about a number of issues here. We didn't really get deep into the KZN thing, so let's touch on that just briefly before we go. It is from my perspective, sir. I've been to KZN many times. It's a beautiful province, wonderful people, and it's just amazing. But it is really heartbreaking to see a couple of things happening. Communities being divided because people are pushing narratives about race and ethnicity, and also the wanton destruction that took place in such a beautiful province. Look, I appreciate poverty, but that doesn't explain people stealing 65-inch ultra-high definition televisions and burning stores to the ground. That's just craziness. If you're hungry, my experience dealing with hungry people around the world, and I've spent a lot of time in Africa and I've been around a lot of hungry people and also lived in poverty as a kid. And for a long time, the only meal I got each day was the free lunch I got in school. So living on public assistance, kind of like the universal basic grant you're talking about, but in a different form. So I appreciate where you're coming from. But poor people, in my experience, aren't thieves. Only desperate people are thieves. And I don't know if we got to that point in desperation, but when I see televisions and forklifts and furniture and coffins looted, that to me doesn't speak hunger. That speaks opportunism and wanton lawlessness. And any thoughts about KZN and where we're at and a path forward from this mess that we find ourselves in?
Well, unfortunately, the issue of KZN and to some extent Johannesburg was not properly handled. Everybody was watching the events around the arrest of the president. And when there were people who said we will die for the president, some of those people might have been genuine in saying so, but I guess Mr. Zuma might have told them, say, not in my name. I'm going to jail now. But those who hijacked, who planned this mayhem, have used the poor as a deception. Go and take food there. And we are a little bit worried in this country that this looting were live on TV the whole day and night. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, you don't see that brazeness, which we always see. I mean, the show of force by our police. The Minister of Police was not on the screen. His commissioner was not there for 2 or 3 days. And we normally see him when talking about us wearing masks and so on. I said, where is he? Where are they? And when the president said, I'm deploying soldiers, also there was a dragging of feet. And then the intelligence services also issuing conflicting reports. And then I said, no. As a former coup specialist myself, there is a palace coup there. Palace revolt. Definitely. But we will see, because today we met in Parliament through virtual means. We are saying this incident must be investigated by Parliament. So, but it created curiosity. The people of South Africa, they have been here, they have never looted in that grand scale. Who was opening gates for them, cutting fences, and so on? We don't have answers. We look forward to getting. Thank you very much, sir.
Those are fantastic questions, and I hope the Parliament gets those answers, sir. Major General Bantu Holomisa, leader of the United Democratic Party. Sir, it's always a pleasure. Please send me the details for your deputy party leader, and I'll happily get an interview set up, and I look forward to that when we're talking about money and economics. That's one of my favorite things.
His name is Nabayom Kwangwa, but I will send you all the details.
I appreciate that. Sir, thank you very much. Best of luck sorting out and getting answers there in Parliament. And if we can encourage people to have a vote of no confidence for Ramaphosa. No. Take care, sir.
All right.
All right, folks. That's Major General Bantu Holomisa from the United Democratic Party, who is my guest. Very kind of him to give us an hour today. We appreciate him coming on. My apologies, he wasn't on a couple days ago. We had some issues. He was involved in something, and we had some tech issues. But we did get him on today, and a very enlightening conversation. Some of the things he said, I'm sure people in my stream won't agree with, particularly things when it comes to land and property, or land specifically. But one thing you have to accept about General Holomisa is the man is straightforward, and he's genuine. I think somebody said in the comments here, always said, Jovan Blum said that, you say no truer word has been said, but I think you see other Bantu Holomisa has always been real. Indeed, he is real. And it's nice and refreshing to hear someone who's a straight shooter. He's been honest about things. And interesting enough, as I said, the party is small, but they've always occupied a niche that's given them influence and be able to influence events. Hopefully that can continue for this opposition party in its role in South Africa's parliament. We'll see what happens. I got the impression from him it's a done deal that the elections are in February, but that's not what I'm understanding from the press. So we'll have to look forward to that and see what's going on. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the support for the channel. We got 73 people currently watching the stream. Come on, can you not give us a like on this? Man, we got some nice super chat revenue from Daniel Prinsloo, sent 1,000 Rand. And we also got, was it 10 euros from Chris Wyatt, I think it was. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for your questions, not just the super chats, but the questions, Chris Wyatt and also Daniel Prinsloo. Yeah, you got me going, Chris. Like I said, cis guy. I know he's from the trans guy. It's even in the description of the video, but I was wrapped up in the conversation. And then Andre Jacob says, Bantu Holomisa is basically saying that something strange is going on behind the scenes. Yes, he is. He is, Andre, as I have been saying as well. And I didn't know he was going to say that, so it's nice to see that happen. Well, folks, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I will do a Night Owls edition later on. It is a Friday, and we'll do probably Giselle's Bourgeol as part of that Friday program. But I'm going to drop off now, and thank you all. Make sure you smash the like button. 67 likes. Ronaldo would be disappointed. There's one short. Keep pushing that like button. We just went up to 80 people. That's crazy. And you can go back and watch this interview from the beginning. I will take some clips of this, a few key points when General Holomisa was speaking that are brilliant, that I'd like to make sure that we get up as a separate piece as he addressed certain questions, and there'll be short little clips. You'll be able to watch those. But I am going to end this stream, and then I'll go over to Rugby Ascendant, where I will give live reaction commentary on Western Province versus the Blue Bulls. Curry Cup action. That's next on the other channel. So thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll catch later on Night Owls, or we'll catch on Rugby Ascendant. If one of my mods could put the link into Rugby Ascendant, I'd appreciate it, and I might beat you to it. I want to make sure people know where that channel is, because not everybody here knows about the channel. In case you're wondering what it is, Rugby Ascendant is my other channel to make sure that the PooTube doesn't censor me, and it is focused exclusively on rugby. And so that's it. I did put a video up last night, and I guess my timing was brilliant because I was following events last night, and Tatiana Schoenmaker got a gold medal, and I just got the best performing video I've had, I think, in the history of the new channel based on that. That video is north of 12,000 views. Let me take a look real quick, although it's slowed down dramatically in the last few hours. 12,012 views. So yeah, it's really tapered off. But last night it hit 8,000 views in less than 3 hours, and now it's at 12,000. So thanks to those who tuned in. I think some people thought they're going to see the whole race. Well, no, I don't do that because it's a copyright thing. I did show the end of the race and the start of the race, and I offer commentary on it. So thanks a lot for that. And there's the YouTube channel for Rugby Ascendant. If you want to go over there, I'll be on there within the next 5 or 10 minutes and picking up in the middle of the game. So thanks a lot for your support, folks. And Emery says, would love to be a fly on the wall at some government meetings. Yeah, no doubt about that. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the White House Situation Room from time to time. And that's it, folks. Thanks a lot. Hey, Robert, you're late. Popping over to Rugby Ascendant. So long. See you all there. See you there, Lizette. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. And, 71 likes. Thanks for the super chats, gentlemen. Really do appreciate that. That's making a nice end of the month there, boost up the revenue for this month. So do appreciate it. Good video on her performance Olympics. Well, thank you, Bosch Sever. I appreciate that. I put some effort into it. You just got home, Robert. We can go back and watch this. It was a really good conversation with General Holomisa, and check it out. But I'm going to Rugby Ascendant now, folks. So everybody, we'll catch you either there or at Night Owls later here on this channel. So God bless. Don't forget the like button. Smash it. And we'll see you there. If you're not a subscriber, you tune in for the first time, hey, this is an awesome channel. I say so with complete bias. It's my channel. But anyway, check it out. So, all right, we'll see you there. Cheers.